I would like to extend a warm welcome to all the members of the Planning Committee, officers and members of the public in attendance at today's meeting. I am Councillor Christine Ward, Chairman of the Planning Committee. I would now like to hand over to Democratic Services to read the housekeeping notes.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live on the Council's website and on YouTube. It will remain available for a minimum of 12 months. I would remind those in attendance to please use your microphones when speaking, but do remember to switch them off once you have finished. Please also switch any mobiles or laptops to a silent setting for the duration of the meeting. If the fire alarms ring at any point, please can everyone leave the room immediately, use the nearest fire exit, but do not use the lift. Please go to the fire assembly point, which is located at the bottom of the car park by the garages. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have a few apologies.
Yes, we've received.
Thank you.
Yep, apologies from Councillors Davies, Hawkins, Riley and Sleep. Thank you.
Members, can we please confirm the minutes for the meeting on the 10th of December?
Agreed.
Thank you. Do I have any declarations of interest? Councillor Frampton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. The application 2510183 Middle Farm, North Ripley, is in my ward, but I've not had any interest or any interaction on it at all. So.
Thank you. Councillor Hartman.
Yes, application 2510. I'm not on the planning committee and haven't commented. That's Forest for you. Thanks.
Are there any more? No? Okay. We'll now commence with the first planning application, which is 25/10679. This is land at 102 Northfield Road, Ringwood. If you'd like to go ahead with the presentation, please. Thank you.
Just to start off, there is an update to this application in that the Town Council have submitted a further representation which is understood to support their councillor who is registered to speak in a few moments' time. So moving on to the presentation, here we have the site area. You'll see it's a large plot, and whilst the site is number 102, the next door property is 98, so in theory there's a plot missing. That's the wider location, so you can see it's well within the built-up area of the town. And here we can see the plot in a bit more detail. Since the developer has purchased the site has been somewhat dramatically cleared because it was particularly overgrown. There is a row of trees along the southern boundary to Fairley Park properties. So here's the proposed site plan. The blue lines indicate the previous scheme, which was refused around 12 months ago, and you can see the footprint has changed for the two. If I can get my cursor to move, there we are. The footprint has changed. The blue line was closer to either site boundary. The properties have now been moved away from that. To the rear of the site we have a third property, and you'll also see 3 large double garages that were previously proposed and have now been removed from the scheme, and the rear dwelling has been moved further, much further away from that southern boundary. So just to compare with previous site plans, the one on the right is the one that is overlaying the proposed plan. So this is the latest refused scheme, and you can see the amount of buildings and the level of hard surfacing there. The previous to that scheme, on the left here, also went to appeal, where the inspector found that there was too much built form. He made reference to the proximity of the dwellings to the boundaries, the level of hard surfacing, and we will see the impact of the elevations shortly. But just so you're aware, these are the 2 previous refusals, and that is the current scheme in terms of there's 3 buildings on site and significantly less hard surfacing. plans and elevations of one of the frontage properties. It's got a front gable. Oh. Sorry, is that better? Oh, I can hear it myself a bit louder now. Okay, right. So, do you want me to repeat anything? Right.
Let's go back and start again.
Okay. So we've just got the general picture of the area here. Just a bit of detail. This is the proposed site plan. We've got 3 buildings, which are the dwellings on this site plan. The blue lines represent built form that was previously proposed and is no longer part of the application. So we had 3 houses plus 3 massive double garages. These are previous schemes. The one on the right is the latest refusal from 12 months ago, showing 3 houses, 3 large double garages, and quite a lot of hard surfacing. The one to the left, for 4 houses, 4 single garages, was dismissed on appeal as well as being refused by the planning authority. And some of the issues that the inspector raised with the houses were too close to the boundaries. There was a lot of hard surfacing and a lot of built form on site. So the design of the dwellings has also been amended since the previous refusals. We've now got a front-facing gable, and the massing of that front elevation is a lot reduced from the previous scheme. Plot 2 is just the same property but handed. And here we have the proposed street scene. So the blue line here indicates the refused scheme. So you can see that they have reduced the massing quite substantially, and they have brought the properties away from the side boundaries. Just a little bit more detail. They're each going to be provided with a cycle store in the garden. And the photographs. Now, the photographs are taken over 2 different occasions because I've been dealing with this site for some time. So I've got photographs from October 2022 and December 2024 as well. The house on the left-hand side there, or the bungalow, is in a bit more disrepair now. The windows are actually boarded up at the current time. The photograph on the right shows number 98 next door, which is a 2-storey property. And you can just about see the garage to the host dwelling at the back there. Again, this is looking through to the rear of the site. You can just about make out the roof forms of properties in Fairley Park amongst the trees there, but perhaps a little bit clearer in that second photograph. And this is from the front, where you can see number 104 next door and the host dwelling. The proposed dwellings aren't to be sited particularly any further forward than this, so the building line is pretty well maintained. So, having regard to the location of the site, it has addressed, in our opinion, the reasons for refusal that were on the previous application from 12 months ago. It has considered the appeal decision as well, and it would provide 3 family homes on a large plot without adversely affecting the character of the area or the residential amenities, and adding to our much needed housing supply. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have 3 speakers. Mr. Darrell Howells of the Planning Consultancy, Mrs. Margaret Roberts, Objector, and Councillor Philip Day, Ringwood Town Council. You will all have 3 minutes, so we'll start with Mr. Darrell Howells. Thank you.
Good morning, members. I represent my own planning consultancy, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the applicant. I am grateful for your senior planning officer's consideration of my client's application and their recommendation to approve. Members will now be aware of the long planning history, most notably a 4-unit scheme dismissed at appeal, and prior to this application, a 3-unit scheme also refused planning consent. The current scheme has been redesigned by a new architect with fresh ideas how to address the reasons for refusal of each of the previous refusals. All 3 units are now chalet bungalows with articulated roof forms, reduced eaves levels, reduction of building footprints, and now incorporate integral garages, thus reducing the amount of built form on the site and increasing the opportunities for planting. Your planning officer acknowledges that the built form and hard standing are dramatically reduced and now the scheme is enhanced. The rearward dwelling on plot 3 is positioned directly behind the dwelling on plot 2, so to screen it from the street scene, unlike the previous 3-unit scheme. Development of housing to the rear of the site was deemed acceptable by the planning inspector if screening such as planting and hedging were introduced as it is today. Your officer confirms that the revised layout achieves a better balance between the development and the green space and respects the site's green and tranquil context. In terms of neighbouring amenity, the proposed chalet bungalow on plot 3 has been moved away from the rear boundary by approximately 5 metres, thereby increasing the separation distance to number 32 Fairley Park. On the previous scheme, there were 3 large first-floor windows, which are now replaced by 1. Your officer is satisfied there is no harmful overlooking and that the previous amenity issue regarding the reason for refusal has been resolved. Your highways officer raises no objection and confirms that the vehicular access and the car parking arrangements are acceptable. The scheme now incorporates an up-to-date ecology appraisal and satisfactory biodiversity, and the Council's ecologist raises no objection and the necessary habitat and recreational mitigation will be secured. In the planning balance, members will be fully aware that the Council does not demonstrate a 5-year land supply at the moment. It is currently around about 1.5. In that context, the delivery of 3 high-quality new homes within the settlement boundary in a sustainable area normally attracts a significant weight towards your consideration. For the reasons set out in this deputation and the justification set out in the report, I would ask you to support the officer's recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Margaret Roberts, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Caspian Developments have had almost 6 months to prepare for today. We've been given less than 6 days to confirm our attendance, denying working families and childcare supporters no opportunity for equal representation. Telephone inquiries were made with regard to joining this meeting remotely. However, in our technological age, that was deemed not possible. Northfield Road is 16 feet wide and almost a mile in length. There are no traffic calming measures and no yellow lines. To one side, it has a narrow pavement, only 2 feet wide in some places, which is frequently interspersed with drop curbs for driveway access. Since the bridge repairs on the A31 in Ringwood, unfortunately it has become what can only be described as a rat run for all manner of vehicles between the A338 and the A31 in both directions. And because it is an unencumbered and relatively straight road, these vehicles often travel at speed. To date, 13 very detailed submissions, including photographs, have been submitted to object to this plan, highlighting the genuine concerns of local residents, specifically including the potentially dangerous impact from the sheer volume of additional vehicles from this site onto the very long and busy road, the enormous environmental impact from the loss of biodiversity from the site, rainwater management. The road alongside the frontage of this site regularly floods. Mere soakaways will not compensate for natural drainage, as the sheer volume of concrete that will be required to facilitate this plan will, excuse the pun, flood the site, or setting a precedent for backland development. Excuse me. Caspian Developments applied to the Secretary of State, albeit the previous government, following this committee's rejection of their previous plan, 221146. That resulted in an independent assessor visiting the site and submitting a very comprehensively detailed report. Most of these issues contained in that report have been actioned by Caspian Development, which I believe accounts for the 4 extensions since July 25 to this meeting today. However, there is one very significant observation from that report which has definitely not been on the Caspian Development agenda, and that is the issue of backland development. To quote from the reasons outlined in that independent assessed report, backland development is not a predominant form of development in this vicinity, and the proposal would result in significant built form throughout the site in an area where the spaciousness and verdant character is important to the sense of place and local distinctiveness of the area. The amount of built form would also be emphasised by a mixture of hard standing required for parking and the access road, as well as noticeably restricting plot size within which the dwellings would be sited, unquote. These observations remain pertinent to this current plan, especially so as I've been reliably informed that Caspian Developments is already anticipating approval today. So much so that plans have already been drawn up for a fourth dwelling on the site.
Mrs Roberts, you've run over your 3 minutes. Can you conclude, please?
Okay, my appeal to you all is not to set a precedent here. Caspian Developments has no concerns for our living environment, community safety or well-being. We, the residents, taxpayers and voters, will be left to live with the aftermath of this proposed overdevelopment.
Councillor Philip Day, I come on to you. 3 minutes, okay? Thank you.
Good morning, Madam, and your colleagues. I'm grateful to your officer for mentioning the additional information that was, or representation that was provided on Monday. Sorry that it was late, but there was a material change circumstance on the 6th of December when a decision came from the Planning Inspectorate that I have referenced in the further representation, and I hope that you've had an opportunity of looking at that and considering it. There are significant similarities between the two applications, the appeal and the current one, specifically as far as the Town Council is concerned, that in both cases the Ringwood Neighbourhood Plan policies R7 and R10 were engaged. With regard to policy R7, that relates to enhancing local distinctiveness, character and identity. To an extent, that is a subjective matter, but your officer has commented that what is now before you is much improved on what was there before, and the Town Council agrees with that, with respect. However, it is equally with respect not good enough, particularly with regard to the third property at the rear of the site. In our opinion, it contravenes policy R7, as was the case in the appeal case. Policy R10 is also engaged, and I'm intrigued to note that nobody has referenced that specifically, other than in the officer's report, which asserts in terms that the application is not fully compliant with policy R10, which is all about sustainability, eco-housing and the like. And of course, we're in a situation where this council has declared a climate emergency, etc. The appeal decision is important because it addresses what happens when you have, in this case, an acute shortage, in both cases, of housing supply against the 5-year test, as it were, and what then happens in terms of applying the tilted balance. The inspector made it very clear that in the other case, the scheme would unacceptably harm the character and appearance of the area, and that the importance of complying with neighbourhood plan tilted the balance the other way towards refusal. I cannot point the finger of blame at anybody that this particular decision wasn't referenced, because it wasn't even with us just over a week ago. But it is important. It's the first time that the Ringwood Neighbourhood Plan has been considered at appeal level. It has been strongly supported by the Inspector, and I invite you today to do precisely the same, to support the principle of neighbourhood plans, the importance of them, and to support the town of Ringwood in opposing inappropriate development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have questions for officers? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Frampton.
Thank you. Yes, an officer of Councillor Day, if possible. On our page 11, officers have said that with regard to the comments made by the Town Council proposers on this site have not previously been refused for being overdevelopment. So, obviously, you're saying that your Ringwood policies are important, and they are, and we recognise that. Why do you think it's now overdevelopment and it wasn't before? Or why did you not comment before that it was overdevelopment? The reason I'm asking this is that when we see subsequent applications coming through, when it's turned down on things, that's what the applicant then looks to knock down, to say, right, well, we tick that box, we tick that box. Once we've ticked them all, it goes through because that's all it was objected to. So the previous one, it would appear from the officers, is that Ringwood Town Council have not objected to basically the number in the past. Is that correct?
We certainly objected to the 4 properties on site, and I believe that we also objected to the earlier scheme in terms of overdevelopment and the appearance and the like. The fact of the matter is, however, that we're now in a situation where we have this appeal decision. This application is not compliant with policy R10. That's an absolute given, and I don't think anybody is going to disagree with that. Policy R7 is a subjective test to a very large extent, and you are entirely entitled to respectfully disagree with your officers and to say, well, no, we don't think that this is appropriate, specifically given that third property at the rear of the site.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. This is going to be a really dumb question, so forgive me up front here. Could you tell me what the definition of a chalet bungalow is? Because these look like houses to me, and I don't really understand why we're calling them chalet bungalows, otherwise to sound small. So,
I don't know the official definition of a chalet bungalow. To me, a chalet bungalow is a bungalow that's got accommodation in the roof and has single-storey eaves. That's what my definition of a chalet bungalow
I just asked that for propriety's sake, because these look like 3 normal 4-bedroom houses to me.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Councillor Woods.
Can I ask, originally you, in your excellent presentation, you said it was formerly 2 plots, this plot.
I mentioned that simply because the numbering in the street goes from 98 to 102, 102 being the site, and as you can see from the layout here, this is number 98 to the west. There's nothing where 100 could have been, and the site is 102. The bungalow to the east is 104.
So are you suggesting...
So I think over the years, I suspect when the street was laid out, it would have been a double plot that 102 was built on and 100...
So you're suggesting originally there would have been 2 houses on there anyway?
Well, looking at the layout there, I think that there is capacity that it was intentioned, but it's not a major issue.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions? In which case we're going to debate. Does any... Councillor Frampton.
Madam Chairman, I've driven along that road when Powner School are kicking out, and it's an absolute nightmare, but I don't know that putting any more houses in there is going to make it any worse or any better. It is a nightmare, that road, and I have to agree with the objectors. I can't find anything materially substantive to overturn the officer's recommendation. Ringwood Councillor Day is right that R7 is a subjective. R10 is more about the climate change and sustainability. And I do think that certainly dropping the mass and scale on the front 2 has actually made it more in keeping. And whilst I am very sympathetic, and I do not like putting houses at the back of other ones, if you actually look at the main aerial view, to the left at the back there are 2. It almost does fulfil the square, albeit, yes, it is behind. I can't see reasons that would stand up at appeal for actually overturning the officer's recommendation. And so I'm going to have to propose that we go with the officers, although I certainly do have regard for the very important Ringwood Town Plan that they have got. As I say, some of it is a subjective view of its policies. So I have to propose, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Can we just bring up that aerial view again? Thank you. That one, or the one with the actual houses on it? The actual 3 houses on it?
52 and 54, isn't it? Already in that building line.
Is that the one you wanted to look at, or is it the one with the houses on? Okay.
Sorry, Madam Chair, that demonstrates that sort of building line in that particular area, 52, 54, are already down there. And whilst, yes, the access is behind the new 2 front, it's not particularly out of keeping. And when you look at the density further south again, it's quite a higher density. Yeah. So it sort of blends in. It's not ideal, I know that, but I can't see any reasons that we could defend on appeal to not give this.
Thank you. Do we have any more comments? Councillor Hartman.
Yeah, I'll second Councillor Frampton. I agree. Thank you.
Councillor Wade.
Chairman, yeah, it's interesting because I have a lot of sympathy both for Ringwood Town Council because you've got a new plan and this goes against it. And I also have sympathy for the residents because this is a development in the area that hasn't got it at the moment. But the officer has given us a very concise reason why we should accept it. And I think Councillor Frampton has a point, actually, that if we look at this holistically, pure and simple through the lens of the planning department, there aren't any real logical reasons to refuse it and to not go with the officer's recommendation. Because if there was, somebody on this committee would be saying it. I've no doubt about that, right? Because we have a lot of sympathy for the points that you have put across. So the reality is that we need to go with the officer's recommendation on this because we don't have a choice, because we have to follow the planning regulations.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? In that case, we'll go back to the speakers and you all have 1 minute to respond. So, Mr. Howells, 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just say thank you very much to the members for their debate. Yes, this is a sustainable location and the pattern of development is a material planning consideration before you. The planning inspector did not dismiss the principle of putting a dwelling behind a dwelling. He just simply dismissed the scheme that was currently before him. But as you would have seen, the scheme before you today is significantly smaller in terms of footprint, hard standing, quantum of development, but it does introduce a far greater amount of landscaping than the inspector previously considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Roberts, you have 1 minute to respond.
Just to clarify, this is not about overdevelopment, nobody's used that. It's about backland development and it's about not setting a precedent here. If this should come to pass, all our neighbourhood concerns would be amplified. My appeal to you all is not to set that precedent. Our road is a very, very long road. If people sold off bits of land and this started happening, it's already a nightmare, which you admitted yourself. Plot 2 behind the screen from the street makes a lovely space for that 4th property, which we've been told is already committed to plan. Thank you. I have nothing else to add.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. Halfway through paragraph 12, the conclusion planning balance of the officer's report, it asserts in terms, it is clear that the scheme fails to fully accord with the policy R10 of the neighbourhood plan, and this must weigh against the scheme. That gives you a perfectly good reason for refusal, further supported now by the decision in the appeal case, if I can call it that, where the inspector attached very considerable weight to neighbourhood plan policies. If you allow this, then one questions why bother having a neighbourhood plan if the policies there are not followed. And please bear in mind that, yes, it was conceived by Ringwood, but it forms part of your policy. So if you were to grant this, you would be granting it contrary to your own local plan policy, which includes the neighbourhood plan. Please refuse it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go to the vote. The recommendation is to grant to the service manager. That's been proposed by Councillor Frampton, seconded by Councillor Hartman. Could you please vote? Thank you. Is that correct? Thank you. That's been granted. 8 for, 1 against. So that's been granted. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move to the next application, which is 25/10183, Middle Ripley Farm, North Ripley Road. You'll find this on page 23 of your agenda. We do have 2 speakers, but we'll go over to Vivian for the presentation. Okay, thank you.
Middle Ripley Farm is the site edged red here. We've got a variety of buildings within it. To the south is the listed threshing barn. To the west is the U-shaped building which would be converted to the dwelling. The area to the north is an existing area of garden which would be transferred to be the garden area for the new dwelling. And then to the east of the site, we've got a couple of cottages which front the road. So there's the wider picture with Ripley. It's a relatively small area, but we do have Sopley School just to the southeast of the crossroads there. It's quite a rural area with a lot of agriculture in the area. So here we have the proposed site plan. The threshing barn is retained, refurbished and converted into ancillary storage in association with the proposed dwelling, which would be in this main brick structure here. The red dotted line indicates the footprint of the existing structure in that location, which is in a lesser state of repair, shall we say, and is being replaced by a similar footprint-sized building. To the north, a couple of smaller buildings would be converted into a home office and bin store and a carport. The rest of the courtyard remains open and provides parking for both the new dwelling and retains the existing parking for the cottages at the back of them. So barn A is the barn to be converted into the dwelling. The picture on the left is taken from the courtyard, and you can see the state of the element that would be replaced. To the right of that photograph is the single-storey element, which will be converted into the carport and office element. These are just a couple of photographs within the building. And more pictures of the elements that will be the ancillary home office. And that is the threshing barn just on the left-hand side of that bottom photograph, on the right-hand side. Sorry, I'm getting my lefts and rights mixed up today. I do apologise. So here we have the existing and proposed elevations facing the courtyard. We have the large opening retained with barn doors added, and a window put in where there's currently a blocked up opening, so very limited change to that elevation. This is the new element. And then That is the southern elevation, showing the carport, bin store and home office, and the southern elevation of the new element. So to the rear again, we've got an opening, a blocked up opening being reopened with no access onto the land to the rear, but just maintaining the simple form of that building. The north elevation, a new opening would be formed, and this would be the access into the garden area. So just a few more building photographs. This is inside the threshing barn. There's a little bit of repair work needed to replace some of the timbers on the outside southern elevation, and I think there's a small hole in the floor which needs repairing as well. So that would all happen as part of the scheme, and the building would have a pair of doors put on the front of it. There is also an associated listed building consent which deals with these works, but that doesn't need to be considered at committee. So there we have the elevations of the threshing barn in context with what would be the dwelling. So it's still, you can see how it's connected to the dwelling and it's not too far away. And just a couple more shots of the entrance to the courtyard. The buildings on the right-hand side there is the back of the pair of cottages on the road frontage. So, being in the green belt, we feel that this isn't inappropriate development. We've been in lots of discussions to try and address the previous reasons for refusal, and we're now satisfied that that has happened, and it would make good use of an otherwise underused listed and curtilage listed buildings, and we are recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Michael Pax, agent, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am here to support the officer's recommendation to grant permission for the proposal at Middle Ripley Farm. I appreciate that the application represents a departure from policy DM20, which generally restricts residential development in the countryside. However, I'd like to highlight why this scheme deserves your support. First, the benefits. The proposal secures the long-term viable use of listed and curtilage listed buildings, preventing the deterioration and preserving the important heritage assets. 2. It achieves this without harming the openness of the green belt. The conversion and modest extension are proportionate and sympathetic to the existing structures. 3. The design respects local character, retains the courtyard setting and enhances the appearance of the site. Secondly, the technical matters. The flood risk concerns have been addressed through raised floor levels and resilience measures agreed with the Environment Agency. Ecological and biodiversity net gain requirements will be met with a habitat management plan monitoring and secured for 30 years. Nutrient neutrality is achieved through mitigation at Court Farm, ensuring no adverse impact on the River Avon. Highways, residential amenity and air quality have all been addressed and found acceptable. Third, the wider planning context. The absence of a 5-year housing supply is significant material consideration. This proposal contributes to addressing that shortfall, albeit modestly, and does so in a sustainable way that safeguards heritage and environmental interests. Finally, this is not a speculative development, it's a sensitive reuse of redundant agricultural buildings, delivering a single dwelling in a sustainable way while safeguarding heritage and meeting environment obligations. In short, the proposal complies with national policy, addresses previous reasons for refusal, and offers clear public benefits. I respectfully ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation and grant permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Allen, you have 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to support this, this application. This is a good use of redundant farm buildings and there's an effective use of land. It will provide a much-needed residential building. This is the perfect way to increase housing in the countryside without taking up yet more agricultural land. The redevelopment has been sensitively designed and the view from the road will be little changed. This new use will ensure that the future of the old buildings can serve our local heritage and enhance the historic environment and will not change the openness of the green belt. The technicalities of the project have been covered by the planning officer, so I'll not reiterate these, but although the proposal does not satisfy the criteria of policy DM20, it does provide a new dwelling on an existing site, which may possibly lay unused for more years to come unless deteriorate more. Furthermore, it is within the village of Ripley and is likely to support the local services such as the village school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. Councillor Frampton.
Yeah, I've got a question of the agent. And you may have to consult with the applicant. I don't actually ever remember these buildings getting flooded. I know that Sopley has had serious flooding, particularly around the school. But I have a feeling that these are only going back to what the Environment Agency said about the floodplain. I can't remember that I've ever seen these going under. Do you know if they have or they haven't?
There's no history of them at all of flooding. I'm afraid this is where the mapping system picks this up as a potential, but there's never ever been a history of it.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? In that case, we'll go into debate. Councillor Frampton.
Madam Chairman, I compliment the officer on giving the recommendation for approval here. This guarantees the protection of these buildings, which are a major contribution to the character of this area. If you wanted to see other major contributions that this similar sort of thing has done, you only have to go into the centre of Sopley, where the old farm buildings were converted and the old dairy. And that really has kept the character of Sopley. This is going to be an absolute gem, and I would take great pleasure in proposing the recommendation on the paper.
Councillor Wade.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this is quite a good little application because it's supported by the parish council, it's clearly supported by the local member, and it's supported by the officers. This is what we call a win-win. And actually, it's quite, what I would say, a well-designed application of old farm buildings. Some of them we see are, shall we say, subjective at best, but this I think is one of the better ones. So I'm quite happy to second this, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Dowd.
I don't need to add anything. I was going to second it, so I'll leave it to.
Thank you. I think we've covered everything then. In that case, we'll go back to the speakers. You have 1 minute each. So first of all, Mr. Paps. Sorry, can't see without my glasses.
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Nothing more from me, thank you.
Again. Okay, the recommendation is to grant to the service manager. That's been proposed by Councillor Frampton, seconded by Councillor Wade. Can we please now go to the vote? That's unanimous. That's been granted. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next application, which is on page 43 of the agenda. Land east of Everton Road, Hordle. This application is 25/10974. And we have one speaker from the council. So if we can go ahead with the presentation, please. Thank you.
This is an advertising application for land east of Everton Road. Because it's an advert application, the only relevant issues for consideration are amenity and public safety. This is the red line plan. This shows the whole of the site. This application refers to strategic site 9, but the exact location of the proposal isn't across the whole site. This shows the general location plan. The relevant portion is adjacent to Everton Road. Here's the aerial photograph, which shows the context of the village to the left. However, the aerial imagery hasn't updated to include the construction that has taken place recently. This is the site plan. The area surrounded by the black square is what is relevant to the application. Zooming in, we can see that the proposal includes 2 entrance totems with flagpoles, which will be positioned to the site entrance, which is the orange at the bottom left there. Then there's 1 proposed show home sign, which is located to the bottom left of building C, and then some parking signs for customers, which are adjacent to the parking bays marked 77. These are what the signs are proposed to look like. These are the totem signs for the show home and the car parking. They're relatively modest inside and considered to have an appropriate design. The proposed entrance totems of the flagpoles are relatively tall, but they are fairly typical for developments of this size and nature. This is an image showing the site entrance. What would be visible from the site entrance are obviously the 2 entrance totems with the flagpoles, as well as potentially the show home sign. The car parking is round to the back of the development, so it would be mostly screened by the fence and the rest of the development. This is a wider view of the street scene, just showing what the approach to that looks like. We did consult highways on this application, and they've raised no objection. So from a public safety perspective, it's not considered that there are any issues, and the design is considered appropriate and in keeping with what is typically expected of this development. Should be noted that the signs are all non-illuminated, which was a change from the initial version of the proposal, but the reduction in the illumination, as well as there was also a reduction in the quantity of signs proposed, was in response to an initial objection by the Parish Council, and it's considered that this addresses all the issues raised, and thus the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Colin Sandbrook, you have 3 minutes to put your case. Thank you.
Thank you. We recommend refusal of this planning application on the grounds of visual and sound intrusion by day and night. We feel that the concerns raised have not been fully addressed. Our grounds for refusal are the bats have a significant colony in a substantial bat house constructed as a planning condition at least a year prior to any works on site. Flags are likely to disrupt their echolocation and cause a similar displacement to that regarding small wind turbine impact. Owls, birds of prey and many other precious and endangered species occupying wildlife habitats in the neighbouring Sink woodlands would also be greatly affected with regards to the noise and possibly the light. Whilst the environmental aspects may not be regarded a material planning consideration, surely the protection of rare bats and wildlife, by the very nature of their designation, should hold significant weight in this decision. Both flags and totems will cause great visual intrusion and affect the well-being of adjacent neighbours whose properties directly face the development. It will also negatively affect the abilities of these householders to sell their properties should they need to. There are already a number of for sale signs on the road verge of the building site. Consequently, the addition of numerous flags would be excessive, out of proportion for the number of new builds for sale, and contrary to the existing street scene. The flags present an urban style which is not appropriate in this rural setting and is contrary to aspects of the village design statement. We accept there is a need for housing in this area, and given that this is the case, we are at a loss to understand why such intensive and over-the-top advertising is necessary. Surely the majority of house hunters would use the internet and estate agents to access available properties. A plethora of flags and advertising hoardings is unlikely to encourage new parishioners who are looking for a rural village to locate to. We accept that the original application has been amended from 5 to 3 years duration, but we still consider that the scheme is too intrusive and of an excessive duration. We are also afraid that this would set a precedent for future developments, and Hordle Parish Council strongly urges the committee to refuse this application as it stands. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Members, questions, please. Councillor Dowd.
Yes, a question to the officer. There's no ecology comment in the document. Is that a consideration about the habitats of wildlife in the area and the impact that this may have on them?
In this case, because it's an advert application, according to the advertising regulations of 2007, we can only consider amenity and public safety. So while I understand the concern surrounding protected species, that's not relevant to the decision making on this application because ecological matters can't be considered under this type of application.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? In that case, we'll debate. Does anybody have anything to say? Councillor Dowd?
I suppose it's small crumbs that it's not an illuminated sign. The duration is excessive, but that seems to be the way these things are. So unfortunately, in this particular case, much as I'd like to say no thank you, I think we have to accept it. Well, I'll put the...
And do we have a seconder?
I'll second, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Well, the recommendation is to grant... Oh, sorry. I need to come back to you. You have a minute each to respond.
Well, I find it very surprising that the ecological situation hasn't been addressed. And it seems to me that villages like us are under considerable pressure to accept these building sites. And I would think that our concerns about our local environment should be more carefully considered. I would like to think that this wouldn't set a precedent for future developments of which the Bargates are planning. And if I could have your assurance of that, then I might be a little bit happier with the results of this vote, which I know is going to go against us.
Unfortunately, we can't give that. Would you like to explain further why it's not necessary to have that?
Chairman, if I can try and help. Your case officer's already answered the question in terms of the ecological impacts. Page 47, part 11 of your report, it's also detailed there. The advertisement regulations are quite clear on the two matters you have for consideration. It's public amenity and safety, public safety. The report takes you into the relevant policy tests. It looks at the relevant tests and guidance in the planning practice guidance and looks at oral noise from the advertisements and concludes whether that's for residents nearby and opposite or whether it's, in this case, reference to ecology, that there's no harm from oral amenity in terms of the public safety. Your environmental health officers have no objection either, and I don't think there's anything further for me to add to the report, other than the parish council took you to the fact that it's a housing site. It's an allocated site in your plan, and it's part of helping deliver growth in the district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Recommendation is to grant. That's been proposed by Councillor Dowd, seconded by Councillor Frampton. Can we please now go to the vote? Thank you. Our next application can be found on page 51 of the agenda. It's Forest View, Kings Copse Road, Blackfield, Forley. Application number 25/10784. And we have one speaker, the applicant. We can go ahead then with the presentation, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for a replacement dwelling at Forest View, Kings Copse Road in Blackfield. This is a red line plan, so the existing dwelling is a modest single-storey detached bungalow. This is the wider context of the site. The site is located outside of, but in close proximity to the built-up area, and is within the countryside, so the dwelling is subject to policy DM20, which restricts replacement dwellings to a 30% increase in footprint. The New Forest National Park lies to the south of the site, and the existing dwelling looks towards the national park. This is the aerial. There are some mature trees and hedging to the east and the south of the site, but screening is more sparse to the north and the west. These are the existing elevations. The existing dwelling is a low-level, modest bungalow with an attached garage and lean-to. This is the rear and side, and existing street scene. These photographs show the existing dwelling from the outside of the site, which is here, from the front of the dwelling looking towards the west, and the front elevation. And these photos are taken from within the site, showing the garden and the rear elevation. These photographs are taken looking towards the site, which is here, so this is the existing dwelling. The site is quite exposed and it's visible from the open forest. These photographs here are taken towards the forest, looking from the front of the site. These are the existing floor plans. So it's a 3-bedroom dwelling with the current accommodation and a garage and a lean-to shed. This is the proposed site plan with a detached replacement dwelling and attached garage and carport to the front. So the proposed ground floor plan shows a downstairs bedroom, integral garage for 2 car parking spaces. And this is the first floor plan with 3 bedrooms proposed upstairs. These are the garage plans and elevations with parking spaces for an additional 3 vehicles. This is the 3D perspective of the front of the dwelling. So as mentioned previously, policy DM20 restricts replacement dwellings to a 30% increase and no more than 100 square metres. The proposed replacement dwelling is for 344 square metres, which equates to just under 143% increase, which significantly exceeds the 30% increase restriction set out by the policy, and there is therefore an in-principle objection. With regard to the design, there are large areas of glazing to the front of the dwelling, which would result in light pollution to and from the national park to the south of the dwelling. The design is not considered to be sympathetic to the rural context. The National Park Authority have raised a strong objection to the proposal, and members have a statutory duty to further the purposes of the national park. We consider the proposed dwelling would be unduly dominant and harmfully intrusive in its sensitive countryside setting adjacent to the national park. And this is the 3D perspective of the rear of the dwelling. So again, there's large areas of glazing that would look out towards the open countryside to the north of the dwelling. This slide shows the proposed dwelling along with the context of the site and the views from the site from the forest. The site is exposed and the dwelling would be of a significantly greater scale, height, mass, footprint and overall size of the dwelling, and it's considered to result in material harm to the rural context. Officers are unable to support the proposal as insufficient ecological information has been submitted to demonstrate the proposal can be carried out without adverse impacts upon protected species, which is contrary to policy DM2. Additionally, a further reason for refusal relating to the harm resulting from the 143% increase of the dwelling, where the 30% restriction applies within the countryside. The size, scale, mass, height and footprint of the dwelling is considered to be unduly dominant and harmful to the sensitive countryside location, which is compounded by the unsympathetic design, non-traditional proportions and excessive areas of glazing. The proposal is considered to be contrary to the Rural Design Guide SPD, policies EMB3, STR1, STR2, STR3 and STR4, policy DM20 and chapters 12 and 15 of the MPPF. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anthony Carrier, You have 3 minutes to put your case. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good morning. We purchased Forest View in 2024, which is an unmodified 1950s property that is poorly insulated, in need of significant repair, including a replacement roof, and functionally inadequate for modern multi-generational living. The existing layout does not meet current space or future accessibility needs, including level access, a second and accessible bathroom, an additional bedroom and a study to allow me to work from home. The proposal before you is a carefully proportioned, architecturally designed rural dwelling, drawing on traditional New Forest forms. It will result in no material harm to neighbouring amenity in terms of privacy, daylight or outlook. The dwelling would not appear over-dominant from a public viewpoint and would remain clearly proportionate to the size of the plot with minimal impact on the street scene. The scale and massing reflect the varied character of the surrounding area. Our road, for instance, contains a mix of chalet bungalows and two-storey dwellings of different forms and sizes, with no two properties the same. The property follows this established pattern through controlled height, broken roof forms and a restrained palette, including local timber and muted tones intended to recess into the landscape. Although the site lies outside of the defined built-up area, it is not within the National Park, and it is very well screened by tall evergreen hedging and mature trees on all boundaries. This significantly limits wider views to help preserve rural character. While this landscaping provides privacy, it also results in low internal light levels. The proposed window design addresses this sensitively, improving daylight and solar gains for reduced energy demand, consistent with current national design, while following a design already present further down the road. Light pollution concerns will be addressed through the internal layout and lighting, which will be low spill, and boundary planting provides for effective screening. The proposal provides a long-term and sustainable solution, avoiding the need for piecemeal future extensions. It significantly improves the performance of an older dwelling through high levels of insulation, efficient heating and renewable energy generation. New facing materials required to accommodate external insulation have been chosen to weather softly over time, reducing visual prominence. Although submitted as a rebuild, 3 of the 4 existing walls would largely remain, with a modest footprint increase and roof accommodation allowing additional space to be achieved within the roof volume, limiting visual impact and helping the dwelling to sit low in the landscape. Both adjacent neighbours and parish council support the proposal. Members will be aware that the key test outside the built-up areas where the proposal preserves the countryside character and openness, in this case the scale, design, materials and mitigation, demonstrates that it does. While the proposal exceeds the 30% guideline, it accords with the broader objectives of policy DP2 and 36, and represents a modest, well-designed improvement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions, please? Councillor Wade.
Chairman, I've got a question for the legal officer, actually. I didn't click until now. I actually sit on the National Park through the County Council. I'm not on the planning committee and I've never seen this one before I read the papers. Do I have to declare an interest in it?
You are declaring an interest.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, good. Well, I want to make sure I'm doing it right. So how big an interest is it?
Sorry, does it?
How large an interest is it? Disqualification-wise, or
no, not if you've had no involvement in it,
but
you've
declared
your
right
interest.
Thing, then. Thank you.
Okay, questions then. Nobody has any questions. In that case, we'll go into debate. Councillor Hartman.
Yeah, I walk my dogs up and down this road, and the houses they're all different shapes and sizes. You've got 2-storey houses, and they all have their individual character. So I would support my local parish on this one. I would recommend recommend granting.
Councillor Frampton.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. One thing that always annoys me a little bit is when a local parish council, which I would assume, which was probably triggered it to here, would recommend permission but have no comments. That really is annoying, and they should be here talking to it. This is an absolute no-brainer. It's against just about every policy we've got. It's right next door to the National Park. 30% is an absolute set-in-stone policy that we have, and the fenestration there, looking straight out over the National Park, I mean, certainly if this was a few hundred yards, it wouldn't even have come to committee. This is the wrong place for that design, and I certainly would propose the paper and recommendation of refusal. It's just way off the scale of against all of our policies.
Thank you. First of all, we do have a recommendation from Councillor Hartman to actually grant this. So does anybody else want to support him? In that case, that comes off the table. And we go back to Councillor Frampton, who wishes to support refusal. So who else had their hand up? Councillor Wade.
Jim, I actually have a lot of sympathy with Councillor Hartman's point, because I know the area as well, and there are a lot of different size houses, but unfortunately the 30% rule is cast in stone, iron, call it what you like, and we can't go against that, and that in itself is the reason why we have to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Woods.
Yeah, I just want to support what Councillor Frampton has said. I mean, I've never been to a parish council meeting where the 30% rule hasn't been brought up and the application has been kicked out for that reason alone. So I don't think we can even consider this application as such. And I'm going to second it. Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything to say? In that case, we'll come back to the applicant. Mr. Carrier, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, there's, although we're outside of the National Park, there's 3 other properties within the block under the same restrictions as myself, 2 of which are already chalet bungalows, and 1 of which was a bungalow and has been replaced by a significant 2-storey house further up the road. You can see from the frontage the house to the right as well is already a yellow painted 2-storey house. So the actual size of the property is not necessarily out of context here. Although we can increase the size significantly under permitted development, the proposal that we've put forward comes through as a better single coherent design than what I would potentially end up with otherwise.
Thank you. I just want to say that I recommend if this comes back, that you work with the officers and get pre-application advice. Right, we go now then to the vote, which is recommendation is to refuse. That's been proposed by Councillor Frampton and seconded by Councillor Wood. All of those in favour, please vote now. Thank you. So that's 8 supporting the refusal and 1 against, so that's been refused. Thank you. Just to say, change of seat here, it's because this application, the applicant lives next door to Mark, so he's had to leave the room. Okay, so we'll go ahead with the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for hearing this case today. As you're aware, that it's come to committee due to potential officer conflict being... Yes, I can. I've got X-ray vision. You might recall this site. It did come to committee back in August. My colleague James Gaffelin actually presented it to you due to the same officer conflict. So this is the site. It's 10 Deerhurst Close. It's the end of a residential cul-de-sac in the built-up area of Totton. There has been some further development at the end of the close after this main part was built to the south-east. and the proposal is for a detached annex in the front of the to the front of the property. So this is the same footprint and scale and massing as the approved detached garage, which was approved in August, but the applicant's circumstances have now changed and they're wishing to construct an annex instead of a double garage. So the actual size of the building, elevations are very similar, apart from, instead of having up and over doors on this west elevation, there'd be obviously an entrance doorway, windows, skylights on the roof. And to the rear, there will be some fenestration to allow natural light into a bedroom area here. And also these two smaller windows, one serves a ensuite bathroom and another sort of a store area. So I have advised that that could be obscure glazed. The reason being, here's the internal layout. The site actually slopes quite steeply down to the side. So when it's built, it will be levelled out. So those windows here could potentially be slightly higher than the fence line. And a couple of neighbours have raised concerns about overlooking a loss of privacy. But the how to put a room area should still be within the below that closed-board fence that you see there. So that's the area where the proposed annex is to go, currently being used as a parking space by the applicant. So one of the issues has been raised is obviously no longer having a garage which could accommodate parking of vehicles. Will it increase parking pressure? The property does benefit quite a large private driveway space. There is parking still on the site. So I don't believe it doesn't conflict with the adopted parking standards. So overall, it's the same building, just a different use, with and obviously any potential severance of the building to become its own residential property or planning unit its own right would require separate planning consent anyway. So overall, it's a recommendation of approval, subject to the sort of standard conditions of 3 years and following plans and conditions that they've submitted. I don't believe we've got any speakers today.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any comments? Councillor Wade.
Where's the building line in this road, actually? The only reason I ask that is because we don't usually build in front of the building line. And I looking at the plan, it looks like it's in front of it.
Yeah, so it is forward of the building line, but as you can see, it's not a sort of particularly uniform street scene. You haven't got a sort of classical line of straight streets. There's a cul-de-sac here. You've got the number 8 and 9 Deerhurst Close that curve around, and then you've got one, I think it's Rowan Gardens, just down here, and that again doesn't really line up. So it is that sort of suburban kind of estate form of development without any real clear design context and linear.
So that means that particular ruling doesn't apply then?
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
About not building in front of the building line?
Yeah, in front. I mean, it obviously doesn't benefit from permitted development rights because it's forward of that front elevation, which is why they're going through the planning process. But I don't think it's going to harm particularly the sort of the style or character of the area, given the sort of layout and character of the existing development.
Did you want to say something? I don't think there's anything more to say. I think the vote is to grant, so I need a proposer and a seconder.
Happy to do that.
Councillor Dowd, are you proposing?
Propose.
And Councillor Rickman?
Yes.
Okay. So we go to the vote. Grant subject to conditions, proposed by Councillor Dowd, seconded by Councillor Rickman. All in favour, please vote. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. That concludes the meeting. Am I actually seeing right here? Does that clock say 10:15?
It does.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Right out.